Welcome back. You're still watching The Globe. Now, the state-owned Botswana Power Corporation says that it's ready to supply electricity to Eskom during its off-peak periods. This follows President Cyril Ramaphosa's call to neighbouring countries to supplement South Africa's constrained power supply. The BPC says that for the past 3 months, it's been meeting local power demands and will be able to export surplus power to the region through the implementation of the Maduro 26 strategy. Now, meanwhile, both Eskom and the BPC have begun talks on how to purchase the excess electricity supply generation off-peak times. On Monday, President Cyril Ramaphosa announced that Eskom will start importing power through the Southern African Power Pool arrangement. Well, for more on this, we're now joined by Professor Sampson Mamphweli, who's an energy analyst from Stellenbosch University Centre for Renewable Sustainable Energy Studies. Thank you so much indeed for joining us and welcome to the programme.
Thank you for having me, Peter, and good evening to the viewers as well.
All right, let's start by getting your reaction and your thoughts about what the President said in terms of a way forward in dealing with our energy crisis.
So the plan itself is it's more integrated than what has been done before. It's a good plan in my view. It goes down to power station level, where they went to power stations and identified problems at power station level. So that kind of diagnosis has never been done before since the beginning of this problem about 13, 14 years ago. We were relying more on the integrated resource plan, which is a long-term plan in terms of implementation, and we had some breaks where the integrated resource plan was not properly implemented, which created a lot of policy uncertainty. So what we've seen now with President Ramaphosa is that he started by bringing in additional measures on top of the IRP with the risk mitigation, procurement, opening up the space for municipalities to buy directly from IPPs, lifting the threshold for requirements for generation license. So there's quite a number of measures that he brought on board to try and resolve the problem before the speech that happened a day or so ago. And when he came and announced further measures in that speech, those were very comprehensive. Some of the things still need further investigations in terms of implementation. Some of the things need further investigation in terms of feasibility. However, I didn't expect the President to go into those kind of finer details in terms of we still need to investigate this and that, because there are teams that are doing that. I'm also part of a team that's busy with some other investigations on some of the technologies or some of the interventions that the President announced. However, when it comes to the Botswana issue, yeah, I can say a lot about that.
All right, let's talk about that. I mean, you know, the other day we heard that Botswana had excess capacity, but they also challenged in that, you know, as much as 70% of their people don't have access to electricity. What's the situation with Botswana?
So Botswana has been largely buying electricity from South Africa and Zambia and Zimbabwe through the same power pool. So I understand the power pool because I sit in a SADC energy thematic group that deals with energy planning in the SADC region. So I have some knowledge of what's happening in the power pool. It's an arrangement that sells electricity through a bidding system. So when you have excess electricity, instead of curtailing it, you can make it available to the power pool. The office of the power pool sits in Zimbabwe. And then when you make it available, whoever has got constraints and they need that particular electricity, they can then buy from you through the power pool. But when it comes to Botswana having access and wanting to sell excess electricity to South Africa during the time when they have more electricity, or during the time their off-peak times, and I understand it's during weekends, it's something that needs thorough and further investigations. Because one, I know the installed capacity of Botswana is nowhere comparable to that of South Africa. We have 54 times more than the installed capacity of Botswana. Their excess that they normally have, that they're saying they have, we can only get up until, I think, about 200 megawatts at most, if we take from them, only when they've got access. But there are technicalities. The problem in South Africa is that we have a shortage of generation capacity, mainly during periods of high demand. So we need measures that deal with peak shaving. And now, if Botswana has to give us 200, or let's say even up to 300 megawatts on weekends, when our demand is low, we will basically be paying Botswana for nothing, because we won't be needing that electricity. So there is need for thorough consideration and thorough investigation as to when do we need the electricity from Botswana or from the SADC region, from the SAB arrangement that can assist us when the grid is constrained. There were times, the previous few days, where the grid was constrained even during weekends. Under those such circumstances, which rarely happen, we can then draw on electricity from the SADC region if there is additional capacity during that particular time. This is the same thing with small-scale embedded generation, which we are still investigating as well in terms of the tariff structures, because we're looking at a tariff structure that will encourage people to feed into the grid during the time when the grid is constrained, as opposed to feeding into the grid throughout the day, and then government pays a lot of money to people, customers with small-scale and embedded generation. That is not necessarily assisting in terms of easing the pressure on the grid.
All right, so renewables, where do they fit into this equation? Can they jump in quickly, because we need quick solutions?
So in terms of renewables, the good thing about renewable energy is that you can do it in so many ways. One of the ways of doing it is through, obviously, small-scale embedded generation, where people will have rooftop solar PV, and when they generate excess, they can then supply that to the grid. And that can be done quicker if you provide very good incentives. Unfortunately, the incentives that the government needs to provide shouldn't be incentives that will result in people earning profit out of that particular arrangement, but in people saving in terms of electricity. So you become a net consumer of electricity. So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is through what government has been doing, introducing new generation capacity through the programs such as Renewable Energy Feed-in Tariff, Renewable Energy Independent Power Producers Program, where government goes out to public procurement and procure big projects. So those big projects, that the advantage about them is that they can be built within 24 months, and they can be built within budget. We've got an example of how not to build power stations with Medupi and Kusile that took more than 10 years. I think it's close to 14 years. And they were 3 times the original budget. So with renewable energy, we've never seen something like that all over the world, apart from the project that they're building in Congo, obviously, that has got a lot more challenges. The other issue is that there are currently IPPs that have got additional capacity, for which the contracts that they have with Eskom through government does not allow them to feed additional capacity that they have. So those IPPs, that capacity can be freed up through rearrangement of these contracts, and then they can start feeding as and when they generate more. And then the third one is when we have independent power producers who've got additional capacities, such as IPPs in the mining sector and other sectors as well, who can also supply the grid with power. All that is needed is to look at what is the best model in terms of bringing in these new initiatives that were not necessarily there before the president made the announcement yesterday or so.
All right, so it sounds as if we've got enough thinking, we've got enough thinkers, but do we have the doers to get the job done?
Yes, so I've got knowledge that the president, through the Energy Crisis Committee that is hosted in the presidency, has now set up a number of working groups that are looking at various aspects. Like I indicated before, I'm working on one of those groups. Like you asking, the question then becomes, what will happen in terms of implementation? And that question also goes hand in hand with the money that is required in order to implement the president's plan. That plan is going to be expensive, but I like the fact that most of it will be most of the cost will not be necessarily coming from government, but government also still needs to pump in a lot of money. So I'm looking forward to hear what the Minister of Finance will announce in terms of the budget that goes alongside the president's initiatives. Going forward, some of the initiatives, such as the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producers Program, because they are now bringing forward bid window 7 in some way, so into bid window 5. So that they can do, and they can do it quite urgently. There are other issues such as environmental issues, making sure that environmental impact assessment happens within 30 days, within 60 days, for instance. That for me is something that that may be opposed by environmental groups. I think we can do something within the current framework, legislative framework. We can do strategic environmental assessment in the areas where we see that there are resources or there's potential. And then through that strategic environmental assessment, it then becomes easier or shorter to undertake environmental impact assessment once the projects have been allocated the preferred bidder status. So there are aspects that I think can be done quite easily. There are issues around energy efficiency and demand side management. Eskom has got that program. It's a program that just needs a bit of more financial injection. And we've got capacity and people around South Africa, business people who are ready to take advantage of that and implement energy efficiency and demand side management programs at industry level with the assistance of Eskom. So when I look at the plan in its totality, it's a doable plan. I also appreciate the fact that there are people already who are busy on the ground working. We just need to have that final push in terms of budget allocation and those few things that I have mentioned. But overall, I see this one happen.
All right, Prof, we're going to leave it at that high sense of optimism. And let's just hope that the resources and the money is allocated and it can be done. Thanks so much for your time. Your insights are always greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. That's Professor Mamphweli talking to us, about the energy plan that was discussed by the President earlier this week. And part of that, seeing neighbouring states such as Botswana, Zambia, that at the moment look like they have some excess capacity, pooling that into the Southern African pool, and that maybe we'd be able to buy into that. But he does say that it needs to be properly understood and properly researched. Now, former